do more in less time. And if I had talked to you about this maybe even 15 years ago, I would have had a much different approach, because at that time in my life, I still thought that I could do everything at the same time. And yes, you can do everything. You can have a family, you can work, you can do all of these things, but you can't do it all at the same time. And I had a big burnout. My company had some trouble, and basically I lost everything. And so that was a good time for me to reevaluate how I was living my life, and always living for that next goal and that next thing, and not taking any time to enjoy it. So really today what I want is to help you guys learn to get the most out of the time you spend working, so that you have extra time to fool around, start another company, spend more time with friends and family, but not necessarily get yourself to burnout. I have a thing about my middle son has a learning disability, and so I wanted to make sure that I was sensitive to everybody's learning style. So there are handouts. If you didn't get one, you can raise your hand, or there's some on other chairs. And then of course I have the PowerPoint, and so whatever your learning style, but don't feel like you have to use it, it's totally up to you. My name is Holly Vaughn, and if you want to know more about me, my bio is on the back of the handout, but briefly, I'm a mother of 3 boys. I'm an entrepreneur. I founded the company CJ Work in 2004, and we now have 149 products in Office Depots around the country. We're exclusively with Office Depot. And I'm also a daughter and a sister and a friend. Those are just things that I identify with. I'm curious today, how many entrepreneurs do we have in here? I love it. And how many mothers? Right. Okay, so we at least have some things in common. I see that. I love this quote from Bruce Lee. I think it's kind of funny that it's from Bruce Lee, but if you love life, don't waste time, for time is what life is made up of. And when really successful people are interviewed, one of the things that they always say is they know the value of their time. And being successful is not necessarily getting more done, it's getting the right things done at the right time. One thing that is good to know when you're thinking about your time is how much your time is. So if you take your annual income and you divide it by 2,080, and the math works out that you're taking your annual income, dividing it by 52, and then dividing it by 40, you have your hourly rate. And my field was originally finance, so for me, I've always thought about my time in the sense of the value of it. But a lot of us aren't trained to think of it that way. So one of the most important things when you start to think about how you're spending your time is, what is the actual value? Now some of you may be you have a startup, and so you say, well, I don't know what my hourly rate is. You can also think about opportunity costs. So if I was doing something else, would I be getting closer to my goals? So you have to be very mindful and self-aware to be more productive. Right now I want to encourage you to look in the handout and just jot in at the top 3 things that you think waste the most time in your day. And you can't put your kids. I mean, you can, but. And if you don't want to do the handout, just think of them in your head. And what I'm going to do right now is go through with you what research says actually takes away our time. So this is where I have to look at my notes a little bit, because I have to remember a bunch of numbers. It's not coming up very easily. Okay, so we have email at the top of the list. And Adobe surveyed 400 white-collar U.S. workers, And on average, people spend 6.3 hours a day on email. So I will spend a lot of time on that and some tricks and tips to make your email take less time. The second one is interruptions. So the effect of interruptions on productivity, Basics research says, is $588 billion per year. And also it stresses you out, and we all know how annoying it is to be interrupted. The next thing is disorganization. So disorganization costs you more than just, P-Tech surveyed and they said the cost of looking for missing items is $89 billion a year, but there's another cost to that. So Post-it Brand recently did a study, and your employees and your customers are actually judging you by your level of organization. 96% of the people surveyed said that they judge leadership and a company's health by that person's organization. So you could be losing employees, losing customers when they walk in and they see a mess. So on top of, I mean, obviously you're here because you want to be organized and you want to be productive, but on top of that, there is a true cost and some things that we sometimes don't think about. The next thing is repetitive tasks. So why it's important there's a lot of things that you do every day, and repetitive tasks are the perfect thing to delegate. They're also something that you forget that you're doing, you're not aware of. So that's another important one that you should look at. Next is burnout. We all know what this is. I don't even have to tell you. But the University of Illinois just did a study, and they found that small breaks vastly improve focus and productivity. And then indecisiveness, this is a big one for me, and we all know when you pick up a piece of paper and you say, like say you're opening the mail and you don't make a decision about what to do with that, you're going to keep picking up that same piece of paper several times and continuing to not make a decision, wasting time. So sometimes you just have to make a decision, whether it's right or wrong. You can deal with the consequences later, but making a decision is something you have to force yourself to do. And then finally, this is a big one, and anyone that I work with, and I have a couple people that I've worked with before, I hate meetings. And I like people, I really like people, and if you come up to me, I would love to talk to you. I absolutely hate meetings. And I loved that Post-it did this survey because they found on average, in the average US workplace, people have 3 unnecessary meetings a week. And we'll go in later into more detail about what makes a meeting unnecessary, but there's a reason why I sometimes just immediately hit decline, and it's not because I don't like people. Well, sometimes. So my approach to this, I told you it's different now than it would have been if we were talking several years ago. Everybody is different, and you'll pick up a book on productivity, or you'll go and see someone talk like I am doing today, and they say, do this, do this, do this, do this, and you'll get all this time back. I'm not here to tell you exactly what to do. We have a ton of different careers here. I looked at some of them. I know we have bloggers, we have wedding planners, we have a publicist from a school district. So we have a lot of different people here, and what works for one is not going to work for another. You also have different styles, you have different personalities. So as I'm going through this, think of these more as guardrails. And what do guardrails do? They keep you on the road. They don't prevent you, they don't force you to go a certain way. You can turn around, you can go the other way, you can change direction. They simply keep you on the road. So that's how I like to think about, it. I know what I'm doing. Okay, so now we're going to play a little game. I love analogies, and so if that's your learning style, then here you go. Now this clicker would behave, it'll go a lot better. Okay, so if you're going somewhere, and you don't have to yell out your answers, you can if you want, but which car would get you there faster? Now I just show you where you're going. You're going somewhere snowy, and all of a sudden the Cobra isn't going to get you there faster, even though that's a really fast car. You might want to be in the Land Cruiser. So it's important to know where you're going. If you don't know your destination, if you don't know your goals, you can't really decide what tools you need together. So sometimes we have goals in our head, but that's where they stay. And so I'm a big believer in writing down your goals, and again, I'll get to more of that in a little bit. Next thing is, who do you want to get you there? Which of these people? We have a teenager with a questionable driving record. And we have Jackie Stewart, racing legend. So if you are not self-aware, if you just take things at face value, you might say, okay, well, the older gentleman would maybe drive slower, and so if you wanted somebody to get you there faster, you'd pick the teenager with the questionable driving record, and I know because I pay his insurance. So self-awareness is really important. You got to know what you're working with, who you are, what your unique skill set is. Don't try to do something because it worked for somebody else. You got to do something that works for you. So know everything you can about the situation, and part of that situation is you. Now, and my kids get really annoyed that I do this stuff to them, but he doesn't know this stuff. So my approach, basically, we talked about guardrails. So think of these habits that I want you to, or I want to encourage you to have as just guardrails, and then being self-aware, and then finally having very clear goals. So if you get those three things right, you will be more productive right off the bat, even if you change nothing about your daily routine. So developing time-saving habits that work for you. Change is different for all of us, but there are some parts of it that are consistent, that studies show how people change is very consistent. So if you have an idea of what change looks like, you can be more patient with yourself and give yourself more time to get through it, and then you'll know that you're on the right path. You say, oh, well, you know that you're not failing, you know that you're succeeding. So the one thing that's universal about change is that if you accept who you are, you have a better chance of making that change happen. So again, self-awareness, knowing what can work for you. The second thing is creating reasonable expectations. So I like to also think of that as phrasing things in a positive way. So for example, if I said to you, my goal is to lose weight, that's a pretty big thing. But if I said, I'm going to eat healthier this year, I've phrased it positively. It's something I'm going to do versus something I'm not going to do. And it's also a little bit more it's a reasonable expectation because I've kind of given myself a how am I going to do it. I apologize that this is. And then finally, do your best. So as a recovering perfectionist, I know what it's like to want to do everything perfectly, but you really have to give yourself a break. And I think for myself, I did notice that when I wouldn't hit that perfection because none of us are perfect, it would set me back even further because it took me so much time to process that I had screwed up. But now I've lived long enough and made so many ridiculous mistakes that I just have been able to let that go. And I don't wish those ridiculous mistakes on you, but maybe you'll learn more quickly and easily than I did and you won't have to make so many mistakes. So the productivity principles that I'm going to share with you, these are all in your handout with a little room for notes under them. So just so you know if you're trying to write these down, and I realize for some reason the font is not coming up very strong, but you have those all written in the handout. These are the habits that we're going to address, and I'll go into a detail about each one of them. But today we'll talk about setting yourself up for success, setting clear goals and breaking them down into actionable items, planning your day, minimizing interruptions and distractions, saying no to meetings, my favorite, implementing email best practices, creating a doable to-do list, and organize your workspace, put your system in writing, create templates for repetitive tasks, and finally, ask yourself questions, make decisions. So avoid that indecisiveness. My office, they like to play little tricks on me, and when they did this presentation, I'm pulling it up, and all of a sudden there's a cat in a unicorn costume with a rainbow on it. I'm like, Well, they were hysterical. They thought Heather Doyle, who does it, she thought I'd have her change it. This is pretty awesome. This definitely makes a good day. A cat in a unicorn costume is the start of a good day. When they're 15 Silicon Valley startup professionals were interviewed about what they felt like contributed to their success. And 100% of them credited nutrition and fitness. So what I take away from that is that there's a difference between bad habits and bad days. You can set yourself up for success. So if you stay up super late at night, and then you're rushed in the morning because you sleep past your alarm, and you're putting makeup on while you're driving to work, Jamie, and you get in a car accident, you clearly have some habits, or you created a catalyst effect that could have been prevented. There are, of course, bad days. Things happen that are completely out of our control. But if you're well rested and you're taking care of yourself and you have good self-care habits, you're going to be able to deal with those, get back on track more quickly, and in general have more good days than bad. One other thing I want to touch on with that. So, of course, we know sleep is important, and I don't know if any of you read Ariana Huffington said now she didn't realize sleep was so important until from sleep deprivation. Did you read that? She fell on her face and broke her nose.
Yes.
And so sleep is so important. And I'm not necessarily saying 12 hours of sleep. If that's what you need, that's fine. I don't care. I'm not going to wake you up. But at a minimum, know what you need and get that sleep. So the other thing is taking breaks. So there's a University of Illinois study showing the importance of taking breaks, and it actually improves your concentration. The final one, show me your friends and I'll show you your future, is there's a speaker that I've seen that uses that quote. And I think who you surround yourself with really does impact where you go in life. I'm not saying go and say, tell everybody in your life right now, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. I'm not, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying as you make choices about who you want to spend your time with, think about how it contributes to your overall goals. We all have those friends that you go out and they were fun in college. Let's just stay out for one more drink. And then that doesn't turn out so well. But, it's you. But then you have your friends that are like, let's go study. So, we just know how much that we didn't have any of that. It wants to stay on the cat. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize it did that. So now as we go through the exact tips, so your best day, talked about that. Now written goals. What matters to you and what steps will you get there? Will you take to get there? I read this person, I don't remember if it was a blogger or it was an article in a magazine, but they talked about living with intention. What does that mean? That's so deep. And it kept coming up in my mind, and I kept thinking about it and trying to figure out what it meant. And you guys are probably saying that's not deep at all. I already get it. So I apologize if I'm going in depth on this and you already got it. But basically, if you're living with intention, you're practicing what you preach. If you say that your goal is to eat healthy, but your schedule is so incredibly cram-packed that all you can eat is fast food, you're not living with intention. You're not living with your goals. So I think one thing that's really important about goals is to write them down. Whether you do it at the beginning of the year, whether you switch mid-year. And goals change. Where I thought my company, sorry, I keep doing that. Where I thought my company would be is not where it is today. It's good where it is. It's still successful. It's just things change. So it's okay to change your goals. Just make sure that as they change, or if you change direction, that you keep them written. Some people like to have them hanging on the wall. Other people like to journal them. Wherever they are, have it be something that you look at daily and remind yourself so that you know the habits and the things you're doing every day are getting you closer to those goals. So we just talked about having the written goals. So one of the things I like to do, and a lot of successful people like to do, is look at your goals at the start of the day and plan your day around those goals. Things change, and you may have planned how your Friday was going to go, but by Thursday, things are changing. So I think a quick check in the morning, are there any meetings I can change around? Just shifting priorities and just making sure that your priorities and your day matches that. The other thing I like to do is batch tasks and batch things. It mentally helps me. So for example, I have Wednesdays and Fridays are the only days that I'll do appointments out of my office. It could be anything from like a hair appointment to one of my kids' medical appointments, or even lunch with somebody for business. But those are the days I'll spend out of the office. And by doing that, it really set me up by batching that together and knowing that's what I do on those days. Really helped me, and it freed up my mind because I wasn't always having to figure out. I was like, okay, this day I do this. Does it always go according to plan? No. But in general, if you batch tasks, batch errands, look at where they are, get them all done at one time, you will get more done. The next thing you want to do when you're planning your day is consider your energy levels. So I'm a morning person. I do my hardest tasks in the beginning of the day because at night I'm worthless. And I even tell my kids, like, I can't have a conversation with you right now. I'm done talking today. And anything after 8 o'clock, I'm just done. So for you, you might be a night person, so you're just coming alive at night, and that's when you want to get everything done. Just plan your day around your energy levels. And then I mentioned breaks and how they vastly improve focus and productivity. And you can look up, there's a University of Illinois study on it, that small breaks throughout the day make a significant difference. And I've never wanted to believe it because I like to just power through things and just get it done. But I'm learning to stop myself and take a few minutes in between tasks. How do you minimize interruptions and distractions? Sometimes it feels like it's not your fault and you don't really have control over this. But there's actually a reactive way, so a way to deal with it once it already starts, and then there's a proactive way, a way to minimize them from the beginning. The Journal of Experimental Psychology says that a 28-second interruption doubled error rates. And it takes 25 minutes to get back on task after a distraction, and that's from UC Irvine. So clearly it doesn't take 25 minutes for every task. I'm thinking more things that are more mentally taxing, like if I'm doing laundry and I'm interrupted, it's not going to take me 25 minutes to get back on task. And actually laundry it would take me till the next day to get back on task. So anyways, I mean, that's just a study in general. So we know how important it is. Being proactive is doing things like having a password log or manager. So as you're going through, say you're doing different tasks and you have that information readily available, so you're not stopping. Another way to be proactive is to silence your ringer on your phone during especially important times. I keep using my kids because if I use people at work, it would be kind of weird as examples. But I'm going to use this example of how even saying no really, really does help. So my son, my oldest son is in college now, but at the time he was a teenager, and he was going to be leaving to go out of town. I was out of town. I was actually in Phoenix when this happened. And I was on a business trip, and he calls me and he says, "Mom, I lost my driver's license, and he's going to be getting on a plane in a few days." He said, "I need you to get me money. I need you to help me with this. Where's my birth certificate?" All these things. And at that moment, I had to make a decision. Was this something that was worth my time? And yes, my kids are important, but I also have a job to do, and I knew that I was going to be frustrated and resentful if I stopped what I was doing to deal with his problem. So I just said, "Austin, I can't help you with this right now. You're going to have to figure it out on your own." I said, go in the file cabinet, get your birth certificate, and you're going to have to figure out how to do it at the DMV. So he called me back later that night. Actually, he didn't call me because kids don't call, they text. and especially boys. And he texted me and he said, "Mom, at first I was mad at you because my friends' moms will do more for them than you will do for me." He said, "But after a while," he said, "I realized that I've learned to do a lot of really cool things and it makes me more confident in myself. And so I actually appreciate that you've told me no." So you could be doing somebody a favor by telling them no. We train the people around us how we're going to react. So it takes time when you start saying no for people to get that. In my office, one of the things I do is I have a door. So if the door is shut, that's a time that I don't want to be interrupted. So letting the people around you know what your style is and what is acceptable for you. Another thing I do is I don't have my friends call me during the day. I just don't want to get a lot of phone calls when I'm working. So I said, text me if you want to talk, and if I can talk, then I'll make a point of calling you. And of course, if it's an emergency, that doesn't count. So those are all ways to be. So the example of my son Austin and saying no, that's reactive. That's taking a moment and taking a situation that came at me and stopping it, versus the proactive or the other tips that I gave you. Okay, so saying no, yes, we're talking about that. This is more specifically saying no to meetings. One of my biggest, Post-it Brand also did another study, and they show, I think I mentioned it already, the 3 meetings a week are unnecessary on average. And if you think about it, how many times have you been to a meeting that got out of control, where everybody just was chit-chatting? Or you've been to a meeting where you had no idea why you were going there. Or you get to a meeting and 2 of the 5 people showed up and none of them were decision makers. So you're at the meeting, you still have the meeting, but towards the end of the meeting you realize, oh, we're going to have this meeting again. So I like to do a 24-hour rule. I don't immediately accept meeting requests unless I know what it's about. And then with the people I work with, or if I schedule a meeting, I'll send out an agenda in advance, and this is what we have to get done today. If you, and Jamie was really good because she said, oh, it sounds so harsh when you just say no to meetings. You can do it in a positive way and just say, can I have some more information before I respond to this? I'm just curious what you're going to need from me today. And that way you'll be able to be prepared and go into the meeting with everything you need and accomplish the objective. Now we get into the email. So 6.3 hours of your day. Let's get it back. These are like very, very concrete suggestions. So I can't give you step-by-step how to do it because depending on what your phone is or your email provider, it'll be different. But I'm sure you can figure it out through the help. But first of all, turn off audible alerts and pop-ups. So those pop-ups, the Facebook pop-ups, the email pop-ups, even the audible on your phone when emails come up, that all distraction. I do have a few people that are very important and critical to my business and I have to respond to them in a timely manner. So I have set those people up as my favorites and I do hear when I get their email. The other thing you can do is minimize, reduce the frequency of the send and receive. So it's just not happening. You're not even tempted to check it because you don't have new emails. If you do this, there are some successful people that have trained the people that they work with to know that they only respond to emails maybe twice a day. If you do that, you would have to know, again, being self-aware, will that work in your industry? And then also let people know when they can expect a response. So you would set up an automatic email response saying, I check my email at these times and these times and I'll get back to you then. And let people know what to expect. Create rules. So I talked about the favorites feature on your phone, but you can also create other rules just having emails go directly into certain folders so that you don't see them. Things like newsletters and that aren't time sensitive. And then use spam and clutter filters, or you can use, there is a program called Unroll Me. So I don't know if you've ever done this, but I went through and tried to unsubscribe to all these newsletters. It's extremely time consuming. So there is this program, Unroll Me, that works very well. That's just a little, what it kind of looks like if you go on there.
It also sends you like the emails all at one time of day. So at the end of the day, you get all of like the spam emails that you didn't want in your inbox all day. So it's really helpful.
That's great. So you've had a good experience with
Yeah.
it. Good. Thank you for telling me.
I recommend it too.
Oh, good. Here. So step 2 is good email habits. So we talked about just minimizing the distractions. Now we want to develop good email habits. So being slower to respond. Have you ever been CC'd on one of those emails and it just becomes this massive amount of communication of one-word responses, and then after you've lost an hour of your day, it turns out it resolved itself anyways, and you barely even had a chance to respond. I've noticed that, especially when I'm busy and I don't respond, and then I go back and look in my email, there's half of it doesn't even need me to look at. I don't have to do anything with it anymore. So being slower to respond is a good thing. And then I mentioned before to let people know, though, if you're going to be really slow, at least let them know you got the email and then they can expect to receive a response. I can't tell you who to use. We all have different technology, but in general, the main email providers have all of these features that I'm talking about. So if your email provider doesn't have that, you may want to reconsider switching to somebody else. And when you switch, you can forward your emails to that new address. So, I mean, would everybody in here say, like, how many people use Outlook? Outlook, okay, and Gmail? Okay, so yeah, you guys are good. And then the next one is emails versus conversations. And I'm notorious for this because sometimes I just don't feel like talking. I really have used all my words for the day. And so I'll send an email, but you notice then it comes back and forth, where a quick phone conversation would have been much more effective. And we have this thing in our office where I've said before, someone will tell me, I just can't get a hold of this person. I said, really, how many times did you call him? Oh, I didn't call him, I emailed him. So sometimes you just need to pick up the phone. Or the tin can phone. So step 3, how you write your emails is also important. So use subject lines, be brief, and avoid multi-topic emails. And this is going to come into play later when you're trying to retrieve information. We talked about how important it is in saving time. And the big thing about emails is a lot of times you do have to go back to them and refer to them. So by writing them in this way, you not only help people to be able to respond more quickly to you and accomplish your objective or your goal with that email, but you are also able to avoid or have an easier time finding the emails when you need to retrieve them. So I just gave you like an example of where I was very specific in the email and very brief and put exactly what needed to be done, and then the subject line. I'm not sure you can see it, but that way I could search for it later. Saving and sorting. So as I mentioned, if you did the steps 1 through 3, then this part gets a whole lot easier. Some people want to save everything, every last email. And going through that is incredibly time consuming. Even when you're looking through, you might have several threads that you have to read through. So I encourage people to, especially in emails where they have numerous threads, just save the last one as long as everything else is there. Use your folders, don't just keep everything in your inbox. That can be overwhelming. So use folders. And then I'm going to show you a couple tools that you can use that are for managing your to-do list, but also will coordinate with your email. There's a program called Sorted, and that helps you file by action. So you can also just create folders like do this week or do next month if you like to use your inbox as a to-do list. I would avoid using an inbox to-do list after I say that, but I know no matter how much I say avoid doing that, you should have an actual to-do list. People are going to still do it anyways. So you can use sorted, and then I'm going to show you on the next slide about Trello. Does anyone in here use Trello? I love it. So the importance of to-do lists is that, number one, they show you where you can delegate. So as you're growing your business, or even as your business, even if you're an entrepreneur, you're growing business within your company, you may end up needing more help. So in order to do that, to see where you need help and what kind of help, you have to be able to have these lists that you can look at and know what can be delegated. I have a friend that owns a small business, and she would have a really hard time. She procrastinated on invoicing. She hated invoicing. And her business is in the fashion industry. And so it wasn't something critical that she needed to do. And she finally found somebody for $150 a month that would do all the invoicing for her because it took so little time by somebody that actually didn't mind doing it. So it's really important on your to-do list, if something keeps not getting crossed off, it's a prime item that you can delegate. Shared projects are hard to track. You know, who's doing what, and is it your turn to take over? So that's when I recommend Trello. And Trello is free, although you can subscribe to a different brand, but we use this in my office, and you can actually click on, you create cards or projects, and you can send emails directly to those cards. So when you go into a project, you're not even looking through your email inbox to find the related emails. And as you have people come and work for you, say you're expanding your small business and you add employees and you want to see what conversations they've had, instead of having to ask them or get CC'd on all those emails, you can just go into that card on Trello and see where they ended up.
Have you used GetFlow before?
No, I haven't.
I was just wondering if you have it.
Has anyone else here used GetFlow?
Which one?
GetFlow?
Yeah. It's a to-do list too, and it's kind of like Trello too as well.
Oh, really? Okay, well, I'm going to have to check it out.
Can you explain Trello a little bit more?
Sure. Trello is it's an online platform, so it's Trello.com, Trello. And when you go up in there and set up an account, you basically create multiple categories. So I have multiple brands that I have now. So I have a little folder for each brand. And then within that brand, you can set up your projects. And the projects, you can add to-do lists, a calendar item. And so Jamie and I, for example, if we're working on collaborating on something, I can go in there, she just uploads things. So instead of emailing me, I can just go, I get a notification that she's added an update to Trello, and I can look at it. If you go online, I wish that the picture, let's see if I can go back to that. That's how it looks. So you can see social media calendar, all brands. And you can see like to-do items, CJ and Work Instagram. You can even post images. So it's a great way to have all of your documents in one place instead of looking through files. You can attach any kind of file, whether it's an image or a document or a spreadsheet. And then also, as I mentioned, you can send the emails directly there. If just people that are better able to manage internal documents and find information that they're looking for, they found a 20 to 25% increase in productivity. So being able to have either a really good filing system where people that you work with can find everything on the computer, or a physical filing system, any way that people can get information faster is a great way to improve productivity. So this is kind of simplistic, so I'm going to go through this quickly, but to-do lists that work. So you guys know the difference. We talked about writing down goals, but when we talk about a to-do list, we're talking about actions. So an actionable list, if I wrote down on my to-do list, prepare for Blogette's workshop, that's not really actionable. There's a lot of pieces in that. So instead I would say flight, hotel, outline, graphics. Those are all things that I could then put a line through. So that's the right way to do a to-do list. There's a big, and I think people just like to have varying opinions, but some people have said, you know, don't do lists, do done lists, or there's all these ways to try to trick yourself. I think to-do lists are incredibly important, and going back to helping you prioritize and checking things off is strangely satisfying. And we talked already about batching tasks and errands. So you can see, like, if I have a schedule, and I say Mondays I do planning and in-office meetings, and Tuesday I do errands, it's just like a tentative overall structure for my week. It's a lot easier to do my to-do list and know what days I'm going to get things done. One less decision I have to make. I'm sorry for this. So the next part when it comes to the part that organize your workspace, you can read through these and see what your organizing style is. And this goes back to the same thing doesn't work for everyone. So organizers used to say, this is how you organize a closet, or this is how you organize a desk, or this is what you need on your desk. What you need on your desk depends on what your job is. And how you organize your desk depends on your personality, because you can't fight your natural personality. You can change habits, you can develop habits. You can't really change who you are. So if you're a stacker, like if you notice that paper piles accumulate on your desk, then you're going to use tools that are geared more for that. That would be like stacking letter trays. If you're a sorter, you like things put away, you might be using a filing cabinet. And if you're visually minded, maybe bulletin boards. So know who you are, take a little look at that, and then figure out who you are. And no matter what, document your system. If you plan to scale your business, or even to get any help, you really need to have your system documented. When you love for somebody to file for you or clean up for you, if you have your system documented, they'll know where everything goes. So I'm going to give you a couple quick fixes. When I design products, sometimes it's out of necessity, and then I don't know if it'll work, but this has been one of my favorites. So I did this paperwork organizer, because now a lot of files I save on the computer, but temporarily I'll have a lot of paperwork that I need to take to and from meetings or have out on my desk. So it just has all of these sections, and I can quickly sort a project into it and actually have a couple of these going at any given time. That can take like a big stack of paper and just make it a little bit neater. The next thing is having a notepad on your desk that will keep you organized, just one simple notepad for different notes instead of a million Post-it notes all around your screen, and then a dedicated notebook. So if you're not looking through 3 different notebooks, those are 2 ways to keep you productive. And it's not just me that says this. Richard Branson said that a notebook is one of his key tips, and then Aristotle Onassis also said that. So it's good advice. Next, you have to manage repetitive tasks, and we talked about how repetitive tasks like packing my suitcase, for example. Creating a checklist for that, so you don't even have to think about it, you're just checking it off, is a great way to manage repetitive tasks. You can also delegate them. If you find yourself doing the same thing over and over, it might be something that you can easily delegate. So delegate, use checklists, and then finally use templates. If, for example, you send out the same basic email several times a day, you need to save that and just start using templates that you only make minor adjustments to. I'm going a little quicker because I'm running out of time, but did that make sense to everyone? So be proactive, create checklists and templates, and delegate. Finally, I talked about being self-aware and kind of being in your head and taking breaks, and part of the reason why you want to take breaks is sometimes you stop yourself from going in a direction you don't want to go in. So I just kind of put this fun little chart on here to managing repetitive tasks. Am I duplicating information? You can read through it and see. I want to make sure I leave time. So asking yourself, is this the best use of my time? Can someone else do this? And am I duplicating information or efforts? Having that dialogue with yourself on a daily basis will help you be more productive. When I talked about documenting your organizing system, there's also an example in here of putting where things go. So if somebody wants to help you file or put away information, you have a documented system. So now I want to open it up for questions. Yes?
Okay, so I think my biggest struggle in regards to organizing is notebooks. Because I have different projects going on between like yoga and blogging. So do you suggest having a different notebook for each, I guess you'd say, business or thing you're working on?
So this is not the actual notebook I use, and I would show you mine if I had it in there, but I use one that is, it's from Office Depot. It's their tool brand. It has these funny pages, but you can make it custom, like you could make your own cover for it, and then it has sections.
For each thing?
Yeah, so I'll have a section for my personal stuff, and then I have a section for one aspect of my business, another section.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes?
You mentioned before that throughout the day you find that taking breaks leads to more productivity. What do you, like, what are some things that you do for breaks?
Sometimes just getting up from your desk and getting a glass of water or a cup of coffee is a great way. We have periodically done, just depending on the weather, going and taking walks. I try to work from home 2 days a week, so on those days I'm wearing whatever I want, and if I'm in workout clothes, then I'll take a break and go walk. And it's really changed. I have to force myself to do it, but it makes a big difference.
So I'm a social worker and I do field work, so I'm out in the field all the time. And between myself and my coworkers were always trying to like, okay, what do you do? And I've tried the whole meditation.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't, I have a hard time shutting my mind off. Like, I don't know, that's why I was like, well, what tips do you
No, and there's some people that I have a hard time transitioning. So even when I come home from work, I have a hard time transitioning from work to home.
Right.
So it is a struggle. When I'm out and about and I need to take a break,
Yeah.
I have been known to go through a McDonald's drive-thru and get an ice cream cone and sit in the car and eat an ice cream cone. I mean, that's horrible now that I've talked about healthy eating and fast food, a total hypocrite, but that's just one of the things that I've done.
There's
Yes.
also some really great apps like Calm, and it'll even give you a little notification where it's like it's time for your break, and then it'll show you a really beautiful like waterfall, and then you just sit there with the waterfall.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. Thank you. So Calm?
Yes.
There's another one similar to that, I think it's maybe called Clear My Head, and it'll tell you like take 30 seconds to read this quote and listen to this sound and close your eyes and think about that quote and
That's great. So while you're eating your ice cream cone, you could do that.
Did you how do you manage your time, or how did you manage your time with your younger kids as far as, I mean, them taking up all your time, but still trying to plan your day out to where you still get the important things done if you work from home?
Yeah.
Because
So
everything you do with your younger children is more important, and
Yeah.
you take up all your time.
So this is a tough one because different kids have different personalities, and my oldest son likes to interrupt me. My middle son likes to put himself in life-threatening situations. So those two, I could not work. They could not be at home. They had to go to preschool for a few hours every day, and that's where I did my biggest tasks. My youngest is actually like freakishly good. I don't want to say good because he's just different, but these things don't happen. I can work from home. If I tell him I'm taking a call, he really won't bother me. So it depends on your situation, but I would say, again, going back to planning your day, if you know there's a time when your mental energy is at its best, making arrangements for them, I wouldn't feel guilty about that, because I think when you drive yourself to burnout and you're yelling at them because they're irritating you, you're trying to do everything at once, that's not good for them or you. That's just my personal opinion. Yes.
Do you have any tips on how to stay organized and remove the noise and the clutter if you work in like an online space, like social media or anything like that, trying to, or separating like personal social media time, not getting distracted while you're trying to do work for clients or anything like that?
Boy, that's also a tough one. I think sometimes you could put yourself, like give yourself a place, like maybe when I'm at my desk, I'm doing client work and I do my personal social media and, you know, from the sofa or something like that. Jamie, do you have any ideas on that? I know that's something, I mean, it kind of just does overlap.
Yeah.
I don't really have a good answer for that. I'm gonna just tell you I don't know. I'm sorry. Anybody else? Yes.
I love the idea of building a system that other people can help you out with, especially when you're delegating. What if you have a very different organization style than the people you might be delegating to or the people that you live with?
That's a good point. So even going back to the email, I read this tip once that if you take the 5 people you work closest with, find out try to understand their style. And I keep using Jamie because we work very closely together, but she knows how I like emails. I know how she does it. And so you're sensitive to that. You can't be everything to everyone, but if you work really closely, if you do have a say in it, if it's somebody that reports to you, well then by all means you want to hire people that are a good fit. I don't need to tell you about hiring. But we all know in big companies, sometimes you have to work with people that you don't. And there are some people that are just a struggle. There's times when it's like the meetings things, for example. I have driven 4 hours before for a meeting to have, one person show up. So, yeah, there are people that struggle, but 5 people, your 5 main people. Yes?
Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on how to stay organized and focused in a community workspace work environment where you don't have an office door closed or the way to?
Yeah, so that noise is a big distraction. They even found on airplanes, and I'm sure Bose paid for this research, but whatever, it's still that noise, that just subtle rumbling in the background. Some people do well with it, some people don't. I grew up in a big family, so I'm okay with it to a certain extent, but if it's things that I know what's going on, it can be distracting. So you can do noise canceling headphones, and so not even really have them on, or be listening to some quiet, calming, peaceful music, noise machine, as it is very difficult. And then I think also positioning yourself in a place, like if you're in a communal place, positioning yourself in a way that you will have fewer distractions. Like picking, the right place, like surveying the room and picking the right spot. Yes?
I have a quick question. I am just super disorganized. It takes 5 minutes and there's papers everywhere and I'm like, where did these even come from?
Yeah.
But where do you start? How do you become I'm aware of it obviously, but do you start in your personal life? Do you start?
So one of my big things about if you're going to organize your workspace is do little things at first, magazines pile up next to your couch, so you put a basket there. Or something, your kids' backpacks pile up in the entryway, so you hang hooks there. That stuff's easy, just fixes that problem, and you're addressing it right there. But in your office, one of the things that I think is really important is to focus on only what you're working on right now. So if you get your current projects organized, don't worry about organizing your taxes from 2007. Someday, if you have tons of time, you can go back and do that. For now, just throw them in a box that says 2007 taxes or whatever. Do not spend a lot of time going back and organizing old information. If you haven't referred to it now, as long as you know where it is and you said, hey, I cleaned up my office, I put everything in this bin, this is these years in general, just don't go back to it. Throw away as much as you can, but don't go back to that old information. Focus on the now. Yes?
First, thank you for our stuff that you put in our swag bags.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Secondly, as an entrepreneur, how do you stop? I have 4 kids, but I'm building a business, and I can work 16 hours in a day.
Yeah.
And I'm looking and watching these babies get bigger and bigger and go, okay, I don't want them to get to college and we go, I built this big thing, man, I work 16 hours a day, and I hope your school day was good back then, and it doesn't ever stop.
It doesn't stop, and even though you think, oh, I'm going to have flexibility, there are times you miss things because you're the only one that can be there. I'm not going to say that I was great with it with my older kids. I definitely struggled, but I'm better about it now. My best friend has been a great example, the one that I mentioned that got somebody to do her invoicing. And I've I've watched her and literally putting her phone down and like scheduling these times that are just for her kids. And also, if you can give them, you know, even 10 minutes undivided attention, she does a thing where she lays with each of them at night. And they talk, and that's their time together. So I think with kids, if they expect it, so again, it goes back to planning your day and saying, at this time, I'm gonna stop this. But I'll be honest with you, it has always been a struggle for me. Certain personality types, like we talked about, changing gear is not, like I like to just keep going. So it is hard. I'm better on the weekends, and I try to make up for it on the weekends.
Do you have any suggestions or tips for staying productive when you deal with mental illness or other disease?
Yeah, that is a struggle. So what I like to, when I went through a really difficult time and I was sick from just stress and it actually caused me to be physically ill, I had to look at it. I don't know if you've ever hiked. I'm originally from California. I live in Florida now, but born and raised in California, and I only moved when I sold CJ and worked to a larger company that helped it grow. And so I would be in the mountains a lot. And one of the things I loved is that when you're climbing a hill, if you look too far past, you can't keep going. You get overwhelmed and I can't make it, I can't do it. So you really just have to put one foot in front of the other and keep going. And I think it's the same way like when you're stressed out or when you're having like a health problem. If you fix one problem at a time, fix one little thing, and set very small goals and little steps that get you there. So if you're very mindful about that and the way that you phrase your goals and your to-do list in the beginning, you'll have an easier time doing that. And again, that comes back to being self-aware and saying, this is where I'm at right now. Anybody else? Thank you very much.